When I look at his paintings and drawings, and I'm just completely bowled over. I think it's because we get into the habit of thinking that sex was only invented a few years ago and that we're just wrestling with problems of sexuality and problems of gender. And there was a man who seemed to understand it far better than most people do nowadays.
I'm always amazed by his genius for draftsmanship, because he's a man who could take a line, you could see the confidence and the passion and the accuracy, but also an amazing amount of rigor. And I think artists always struggle to have both those things together, and I think he's someone who really found that.
He portrayed the body not in its beautiful form, not the ugly side, but the real side. Because when you look at ourselves, we look at our imperfections.
He talks a lot about death in his paintings, and I didn't really see that just by looking at the pictures before.
A lot of his portraits were of nude women, so I began to wonder what his relationship was with these women. And then the very strange fact is that he literally has hundreds of self-portraits which actually don't look anything like him.
He really showed everything about the body, and that at the time was quite outrageous.
Seeing what it was like, the cabaret music of the time turned out to be quite dull, quite kind of bland, and I wanted to feel a kind of that it was kind of subversive cabaret music. So I've rather weirdly kind of taken ideas from Brecht and Weil and Eisler, which is a later period, so more like the 20s, but sort of retrofitted them into the piece.
Vienna must have been an amazing place at the time, because it had people like Freud, it had Klimt, and it was a time when psychology and the kind of inner workings of the human psyche were really being explored. And I think there was a real challenge to the artists, because not only did Schiele try to copy the human frame, but he also tried to give us the sort of the psychic reality of the human frame. I always work with dancers in a particular way, because I really value what they bring to the first stage of choreography, which is movement generation. And then my task is really the composition of those movements and the structuring and obviously the concepting of the whole thing.
30, 40 years ago, most choreographers would commission some music. The music would be written, and then they would go away, learn the music really well, and then make some choreography to it, being very influenced by what they heard. Whereas the choreographers think very differently nowadays. Their relationship is really much more with their dancers, and what they like to do, I think, choreographers, is to start with an idea and then work on the movement without necessarily having any idea of what the music's going to be. So the music tends to come later.
Structuring a piece about Schiele is a bit of a challenge, because it's not his life story, because I'm not a documentary filmmaker, so I don't really want to, I can't really show his life story. It's sort of a mixture of narrative and abstract. So if you're having two horses, and you've got to kind of manage them both to make sure not one is leading and the other one is passive. So that's something, we're working that out in the studio. I mean, obviously I want his character to come alive, as well as the women he was involved with. At the same time, it's very much not a documentary about his life.